Hello, my name is Helen Bowden and I have the privilege of being president of HF Holidays. In that role, I shall be chairing our first ever online special general meeting, to which you are all incredibly welcome. Just a formal note that the meeting is being recorded and that HF Holidays is registered under the Cooperative and Community Benefit Societies Act 2014. This SGM has been planned since February 2020. The board has provided papers. We also have a digital comments section on the page you are viewing. If you want to make a point, please remember to include your name and where you live. HF will try to group these comments together and plans to put them on the HF website as soon as possible. Here in the glamorous Elstree headquarters, there are just a few of us, all very socially distanced. During this meeting, you will hear from Malcolm Oliver, Chair of the HF Board, Ben Reid, Chair of the Governance Committee, and from two of the members of that committee, Stephen Guile and Cheryl Honeysett. Although this digital meeting is obviously very limited in terms of debate, the board wanted you to hear from a range of members and their views before you cast your votes, and asked for video or audio submissions. 10 members took up that offer. You will see or hear them as we go through the resolutions. The full results of your voting will be given at the end of the meeting and will be independently ratified by Tom Marshall, a solicitor from Debenhams and Ottaway. While Tom is scrutinising the votes, David Harrington, our Chief Executive, will update us on how HF is coping at this immensely difficult time. And finally, in my experience, technology is great until it isn't. So if you are struggling, don't be shy about using the help key. Our provider, StreamGo, is available to help sort things out. The board has received many questions about the legitimacy of holding this SGM. They also had a video submission from Daphne Forrest, a member from London, and her video will be put on the HF website along with the others. Some members wanted to understand why HF was holding this SGM, as there is no provision for it in HF rules. Some challenged whether the notice of the meeting was valid. They're all really important points, and the chair of the board, Malcolm Oliver, will now address those issues.
Thank you, Helen. Today is about how we do things. It's about governance. And like the foundation of my house, they should be invisible, but they actually underpin everything, giving strength to our organisation. It's actually easy to say we don't need change, but we have no unique right to our market. Whilst we pride ourselves on being different, there are a lot of big names out there. Explore, Saga, InTravel and Riviera have all recently introduced more walking holidays in the UK just to maintain their client base. We still need to compete effectively if we're to have another 100 years of success. Fundamental to our future is having the right foundations, the right expertise on the board, and the right tools at our disposal. Our governance review last year benchmarked ourselves against best practice, getting detailed advice from Co-ops UK and other sources. It was clear that we needed to modernise the way we worked if the board was to provide proper scrutiny and also the effective strategic support to management. It's been a long journey, including the delays caused by COVID. None of us really likes change, but we've aimed to balance that need with the traditional values that we all hold dear. Now, we've had various questions about our SGM process, so the board felt that it was appropriate to deal with them in one statement, which has been reviewed by our lawyers at Anthony Collins Solicitors. So, the statement. We recognise that running a completely online meeting is different to an in-person meeting. We fully accept that it is not the same as a physical general meeting. The government has introduced legislation to support all organisations as normal procedures do not fit in the current climate. However, we have taken time to check the validity of holding an online-only meeting. In order to assist with the smooth running of the meeting, the board would like to respond to several points that have been raised by members during the recent consultations. The first is round the basis upon which we're able to hold a virtual SGM when our current rules make no provision for such a meeting. In response to the severe difficulties that businesses were facing in dealing with the impact of COVID-19, the government passed the Corporate Insolvency and Governance Act 2000, which permits any business under Schedule 14, Paragraph 3 to hold a general meeting online. Our special general meeting, this SGM, qualifies under that paragraph. Of specific interest is Clause 4, Paragraph 3, that states the meeting may be held and any vote may be permitted to be cast by electronic means or any other means. And the paragraph goes on to state at Clause 6 that a member of the qualifying body does not have the right to attend the meeting in person, to participate in the meeting other than by voting, or to vote by particular means. And one of the consequences of this clause is that normal rules about points of order do not apply. Members do not have any right to raise points of order. Given the length of time that we've had to work under COVID-related restrictions, and there being no clarity as to when we can return to normality, the board decided to use this provision to bring forward the proposals that it had originally planned to put to a more normal meeting. It was essential if we were to ensure that the momentum for change within the society was maintained. When this SGM was convened, the provisions of the Act were due to end at the end of December, and this was a key driver for holding the meeting now. On the 1st of December, the government announced an extension through to the end of March. However, I'm sure you'll all appreciate by then it was much too late to start changing things. It nevertheless has become abundantly clear that whatever the driver or the deadline, HF would benefit from having the capacity to use modern technology to engage with its members. Indeed, the fact that we've got well over 800 members registered to attend virtually today, double the most recent best physical attendance, really underlines the positive benefits that it can bring to the democracy of the society. The second issue is about the validity of the notice of the meeting. As stated earlier, this whole process started earlier in the year when a notice of the proposed changes along with the detailed proposals was posted to all members. COVID intervened and we had to postpone the AGM until September. Over the intervening period, we received a number of queries and questions from members, to which we replied and placed the responses on our website. However, it became clear that due to the level of interest in the rule changes, there wouldn't be sufficient time at an AGM to give the matter proper consideration. It was also clear that we needed to split the original single resolution into smaller sections. So in the end, we settled on a revised date of today for an SGM, and we circulated the notice by posting it out in footnotes to all members. This contained the formal notice of the SGM, it gave information on how to obtain all the relevant documents, and provided details on how to register for the meeting via our SGM website. The information on the website has been kept updated throughout. We were still receiving considerable feedback on the various proposals, and in response, the board agreed to withdraw some that were causing the most concerns. A clear indication of the impact that the consultation had with members. Having agreed to modify the proposals, we sent an email out to all those members who had either registered for the SGM or for whom we had an email address. And the email provided the link to the revised agenda and the modified proposals. We've had the support of both Cooperatives UK and our lawyers throughout this journey. Both have indicated that they consider this was a reasonable process to have followed and that it is still appropriate to progress with this meeting. So a final question is whether the fact that the agenda details, including details of the formal proposals that we would be asking members to approve, invalidates the notice. The agenda and notices have been reviewed by Co-ops UK and our lawyers, and they have confirmed that taken as a whole, the notice and agendas are presented in an acceptable way. And as we get to each section of this meeting, a formal proposal will be presented so it is clear that what we're asking you to vote for. So, ladies and gentlemen, in sum, this statement has aimed to confirm the legal basis for holding this meeting, and the board is confident that we are acting within the revised legal framework and rules of the society. Fellow members, you elected this board to steer your society through difficult times such as we face now. On your behalf, we have reviewed our ability to thrive in an increasingly competitive environment. And it is in that spirit that we are bringing forward these rule changes today. I therefore commend them to you and hand you back to our chair. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you very much. And now we're going to hear from several members on video who wanted to make a range of points, both about the meeting and some of the resolutions.
President and members, David Gray from Liversedge in West Yorkshire, a member for 72 years and a Vice President. I am voting against all the proposed rule changes. HF is certainly a cooperative. It is on those principles that HF was founded and has been governed over 107 years. But cooperatives can be different. Most provide an excellent service in supplying daily needs from convenient local sites, whereas HF is excellent in providing experiences and sociability. Our members and guests often keep in contact after the experience and often meet up again by chance or by design. Our rules have developed to reflect this considerable member involvement and are quite adequate except for online meeting improvements. I feel we should not be discussing these matters today as the arrangements for the proposed rules have been so imprecise. Proposed rule changed a few times. Agendas not issued with meeting notices. Disenfranchisement of members who don't have facilities to search for documents online. Resolutions presented in vague format. Some not proposing action, and most not stating the rule numbers they are supposed to refer to. I have been told we may yet be presented with another agenda and differently worded resolutions, but with less than the 14 days notice required by our rules. I have even been told that the changes may be presented on the day of the meeting. If discussion does ensue, I will record now that I oppose the proposed changes in appointed directors. The sabbatical year is extremely important with a number of benefits. Many of you will know that I served much longer than 12 years in total on the board, as did a few others, always subject to re-election at AGMs. I firmly believe that experience over many years, together with the regular influx of directors and their different experiences and views, gave an excellent mixture for debate and decision. I am also against the proposed new complication for declaring the rate of interest on members' shareholdings. The FCA have stated in their own publications that they were never requiring co-ops to decide the actual rates before the end of the period. That information is also quoted in Cooperative UK publications. I therefore hope we will vote to leave our current rules as they are and deal with any minor changes in a more considered way in the future. Thank you.
President and fellow members, hello, I'm Peter Forrest and I've been an active member of HF for more than 30 years. I'm also one of the large group of members who are opposed to all 5 resolutions. This group includes 4 serving vice presidents, 3 multiple times chairmen, and several former board members. This video, though, is a personal contribution. Other members who are much more qualified than I will talk to the detail, so I'd like to share some thoughts about principles. Footnote says that HF is a membership-led organisation, owned by you, shaped by you, run by you. But these changes are revolutionary, not evolutionary, and emerged without any prior membership involvement. It appears that the rule changes, far from being shaped by members, are being done to members. If these rule changes had been truly shaped by members, then they would not have faced such widespread member opposition. Change to the rules can have complex implications and have always been presented at physical SGMs, where they can be outlined, explained, debated, and challenged. A virtual online SGM cannot deliver that important scrutiny function, especially when changes are revolutionary rather than evolutionary. There is no urgency to these resolutions and no reason not to await an opportunity when they can be considered in the usual way. Resolution numbers 4A and B concerning the appointment of directors are the most worrying. They limit directors to a maximum of only 3 terms of office and permit up to 8 continuous years without the current safeguard of a 1-year fire break. Yet current arrangements have consistently delivered a healthy mix of long experience and new blood and have stood the test of time for more than a century. At the virtual AGM in September, our CEO said that year-ended October 2019 was the 4th consecutive year of steadily improving finances and the best trend in performance in a generation. Why try to mend a system which is not broken? I am voting against all 5 resolutions, not because I am against change, but because many of these new rules are badly thought out or even unnecessary. Most are not urgent and can be considered much more carefully at a physical SGM next year, which will soon be possible UK-wide following vaccination. Finally, I have great sympathy for our Chief Executive, David Harrington, and his hard-working team, to whom all this must be an unwelcome distraction while struggling with Brexit and coronavirus. Thank you.
My name is Bob Gomersall and I'm from Ilkley in Yorkshire. I'm a Vice President of the Society and a former Chairman and Board Member. In everyday life, I'm founder and Chairman of 3 very successful online businesses. I'm astonished that we're being called together for a virtual SGM 2 weeks before Christmas to address wholesale changes to our rules, none of which are urgent. And all this in the middle of a pandemic, which is particularly serious for HF as a provider of holidays in which the social component is so important. Naturally, I'm pleased to see that the board has made some amendments to the original draft proposed rules, and I would have wished to be able to support them. Unfortunately, some very unsatisfactory proposals remain. Whenever changes to the rules are proposed, there are a series of basic principles that should apply, and always have applied in the past. We should always be able to identify precisely which proposed rules are covered by each resolution. This is impossible with the proposals set out in the current notice of meeting, and so we cannot actually know what we are voting for. Each major rule change should be the subject of a separate motion so that there is no risk of contentious proposals slipping through alongside a lot of minor ones. But many proposals here are lumped together so that it is impossible to separate out the contentious ones from the others. Clear reasons should be given for each proposed change, alongside a direct comparison with the existing rule. This is not available in any comprehensive form. In many cases, the proposals are explained, but in most cases, the reasons for the changes are not. There should also be an opportunity in the SGM itself for engagement, challenge and debate in which everyone concerned can participate fully. This will be impossible at the online meeting planned. The last time the board made a large number of changes to the rules, it published its proposals a year in advance of the proposed SGM and asked for feedback and comments before finalising its proposals. This SGM has been organised using an emergency government dispensation intended for routine or urgent company business to be held online during the COVID crisis. A major overhaul of the rules is not routine business, and there is nothing in the proposal that is genuinely urgent. So this is hardly within the spirit of our existing rules or of the society. I have heard the argument that unless the rule allowing online general meetings is passed now, we will not be able to hold the next AGM on a virtual basis because the government dispensation expires at the end of December. The legislation already allows the government to provide for a further 3-month extension, which should be more than adequate for our purposes given the promising situation on vaccines. Perhaps it's worth reminding ourselves that the rules embody a lot of the wisdom of the past, and that ideally, change in this area should be evolutionary rather than revolutionary. Taking all these points into account, I have decided to oppose all the motions, and I ask you to do the same.
And many thanks to those members. Ben Reid, the chair of the Governance Committee, will now respond to them.
Thank you, Chair. The board would like to thank these 3 long-standing members of HF for their videos. There are a number of points that they raise around the rationale for the meeting that have already been dealt with by the formal statement Malcolm presented earlier, so I won't comment any further on those. David has concerns around the setting of interest rates and board service, which will be addressed when the resolutions are presented later. Peter was very keen to suggest that the changes that are proposed are in some ways revolutionary. I think as the proposals are presented, it will become clear that this is a significant overstatement of the position. Bob's emphasis was around why now and the lack of consultation. Again, the why now has been addressed by Malcolm's previous statement, so I'll just comment on the consultation. If the measure of a successful consultation is how many members are engaged, changes that were made as a result, and in fact how many people are actually on this call today, then by any measurement this has been a successful consultation. In fact, I would further suggest that this has been one of the most effective engagements with members in the co-op movement over the past few years. It is disappointing to hear such previously strong supporters of HF recommend that, regardless of the merits of the individual proposals, members should vote against them. Particularly as it was only fairly recently that they themselves were prepared to support some of the proposals. The board would therefore ask you to approach the matter with an open mind. Consider the presentations around each resolution and then decide, on balance, whether the changes will enable HF to face the future with improved confidence.
Thank you, Ben. We now move to the formal business of the SGM, and I call on Director Stephen Guile to present the first resolution, which should now be appearing on your screen.
Thank you, Chair. I am proposing Resolution 1 to provide us with a set of updated rules that will improve our society's governance. I will cover all the proposed amendments which are outside those in the later resolutions. A number of these issues should have been dealt with by previous boards as they arose, but because they didn't tackle them, a backlog has built up. Some of the improvements in governance relate to the Cooperative and Community Benefit Societies Act 2014, others from board decisions on good practice following the review we carried out in conjunction with Co-ops UK. The notice of the meeting highlights key amendments to our current rules, and a track changes set of rules is included in the papers for the meeting. To recap, Resolution 1 covers all those rules which are not the subject of the resolutions that follow. We will come to those in due course. A little about my background. Early in my career, I was a regulator at a government agency, the Housing Corporation, where I advised housing associations and cooperatives, which have similar rules to ours, on governance and constitutional matters. In my subsequent 30-year career as a company secretary, I have worked with the boards of a number of public and voluntary bodies, acting as trust secretary to 5 NHS trusts. I have therefore taken a professional pride in helping to develop these new rules that are being presented to you for approval today. I will now outline key amendments which are included in the new rules under Resolution 1. Firstly, major changes as they are described in the notice of the meeting. We have simplified references to local clubs. The criteria for local clubs will be developed by the Governance Committee for board approval based on the criteria in the current rules. Local clubs are a very important part of the HF family. For improved clarity, we have brought together the references to voting at general meetings. As good practice, we have introduced a cut-off in processing membership applications in the immediate run-up to a meeting, so it is clear who is entitled to attend and vote. It clearly isn't practicable for someone to just be able to turn up before the meeting and then vote. That would leave us open to all sorts of abuse. We propose amendments to the rule on termination of membership in order to comply with the requirements of the 2014 Act. Following member feedback, we have removed the proposal that would have enabled the board to co-opt an appropriately skilled person to fill a vacancy occurring during the year to serve until the following AGM. Following member feedback and discussion, we have introduced a new, clearer power enabling the board to remove a board member for failing to act in the best interests of the society or to meet the standards of behaviour that a director agrees to on appointment. A proper process and safeguards for the board member concerned, including an appeal to a panel, are provided. The board will review and publish the relevant code of conduct. The power of a general meeting to remove a board member remains in the rules. This is not some scheme aimed at getting rid of someone the current board disagrees with. In my 30 years' experience as a company secretary and in previous board member roles myself, I have encountered cases where, as with a staff disciplinary action, a quick reaction to an issue may be needed, and also where it would have been a breach of confidentiality for affected parties for details of the case to be disclosed to a wider audience. It clearly isn't appropriate, therefore, for all issues of this type to be debated at a general meeting, and therefore we need to create the capacity to deal with them. Good practice changes are proposed to the powers and proceedings of the board in relation to voting, written resolutions, quorum for meetings, attendance, and declarations of interest. We are separating the responsibilities of the Chief Executive and the function of Secretary in accordance with the UK and Co-op's Codes of Governance. The codes recommended this separation over 15 years ago, but clearly HF hasn't implemented the change. The role of Secretary is separate and distinct from that of the Chief Executive, and as we have grown in size, it's impracticable for one person to carry out both roles effectively. The role of the Secretary is to protect the interests of all members and to give truly independent advice and support to the Chair and Board, a key plank of governance. The reference to officers in the old rule has been amended to reflect modern terminology to refer to senior employees. To reflect best practice, reference to special general meetings has been deleted, and we will now have either general meetings or annual general meetings. For the very first time, we have introduced a quorum for general meetings, and as a result of consultation with members, we have set this as 100 members. To improve protections, now we have grown to over 40,000 members. We are updating the rule relating to the appointment and removal of auditors to reflect current good practice. We have proposed an additional role clarifying the procedures for calling a meeting of the Board of Directors. We also clarify the procedures around accepting motions for consideration at the annual general meeting as a matter of good practice. The rules in relation to the holding of investments in the Society's name have been clarified. Technical changes are proposed to the rule on statutory applications to the Registrar and to update the definitions used in the rules. The rule on indemnity and insurance has been added to reflect current best practice. Amongst the changes listed on the notice as minor changes, there are two that I would highlight. Firstly, we are proposing to delete references to associates, following advice from Council, because the use of that term had become misleading, in that over time an assumption had developed that they had some membership rights. They don't, and the removal of this from our rules underlines this. We still have many members going on holiday with us and will continue to charge them the extra fee, but it will be clear that this does not confer any rights on them. Finally, we are improving our practice in relation to untraced members to reflect current good practice for seeking to remain in contact with our members. On behalf of your board, I commend Resolution 1, our amended set of rules, incorporating general corporate governance amendments, to you now for approval.
Thank you, Stephen. And we now have an audio submission from Louise Cottingham, a member from West Yorkshire who opposes this resolution. Stephen Guile will then respond to her points.
Good afternoon. My name's Louise Cottingham and I live in Leeds. Firstly, I should like to briefly thank David and the staff of HF, who depend on the Society for their livelihood, for all their hard work and sacrifice during this year. Resolution 1 is a catch-all from which the most contentious issues have been removed to other resolutions. In the focus on these issues, significant rule changes covered in Resolution 1 might be missed. It's difficult to know what we're voting for, as the rules have been changed so comprehensively it can take days of reading to compare current and draft rules in detail. Too many changes that make a material difference to the rules and society practice are included in one resolution. It's not clear the rationale for some individual changes, whether they're required by the regulator or by the 2014 Act, or whether they're best practice, which may not be best for HF. It feels as if the board are taking control of the rules rather than the members. This is significant because HF is splendidly supported by the investments of members who feel ownership of the society. There seems to be a subtle shift of power from members to the board. Some issues might be seen as trivial, such as the sweeping out of the rules and into the remit of the board the control of content of statements of candidates for the board, but they contribute to this shift of power. See Draft Rule 14.9 replacing current Rule 15.6. There are significant best practice changes in the rules, and their justification and implications have not been discussed. An example is the removal of the duties of secretary from the chief executive, current Rule 20, Draft Rule 19. Similarly, controls on presenting motions to a general meeting, exercised by the secretary, contain new grounds for refusal, Draft Rule 20.2.5. I draw attention to Draft Rule 16.7, which would allow the board to make decisions without discussing them. This is presumably intended to cover issues that are urgent but unimportant, but there are no safeguards in this draft rule as to the kinds of issues that can be dealt with in this manner. I believe that this way of working would lack transparency and could be open to abuse. It would be far better to convene a short online board meeting and ensure that there is an opportunity for discussion and alternative views. These are examples of rule changes upon which members should have an opportunity for debate. I commend the board for all the work they put into this. However, I believe that some changes are misguided, many lack explanation, and there is far too much included in one resolution. Such changes require an extended period of consultation, rather than simply the chance to ask questions, if members are to feel ownership of them. I'm sorry that I should be voting against Resolution 1 and would urge you to do so.
Thank you, Louise. Louise asks a number of interesting questions. Firstly, significant items might be missed because there is no breakdown showing changes against the existing rules. My response to that is that we have included a track changes set of the existing rules, which shows the proposed amendments to them. However, the Governance Committee will further consider this in any subsequent proposed rule changes. Louise comments on no rule by rule voting, which I regard as best practice. My response over many years of housing association and housing cooperatives doesn't support that view. It is quite normal for details of the rule changes to be provided and for the whole new rule book to be voted on as one resolution. Louise says the rationale for individual rule changes is unclear, whether they are required by the regulator or by the 2014 Act, and which are best practice. In most cases, the commentary on the notice of the meeting highlights whether a proposed amendment is best practice or is required by the 2014 Act, or is part of a set of amendments to achieve a stated purpose, as with Resolutions 2 to 4. Louise's next point is there seems to be a subtle shift of power from members to the board. Some issues might be seen as trivial, such as the sweeping out of powers into the remit of the board, such as the control of statements for candidates for the board. My response is that management of a £30 million business requires that we all, members and directors, do all we can to ensure that we continue to have an effective board and that each year we recruit the best candidates. This year we suggested that candidates group the information in their statements under suggested headings, which we felt would help members in their evaluation and their decisions on whom to vote for. It has also been found to be really helpful for first-time candidates to understand what information is required of them, and therefore helps to create a level playing field when they are standing against somebody who has been through the process before. All but one of the 2020 candidates took up this option, and the response from both candidates and members has been overwhelmingly positive. Louise asked about the control of motions by the Secretary. This is good practice to give discretion to the Secretary to first check whether a proposed motion is vexatious, based on incorrect information, or whether, in terms of repetition, a similar motion has been considered at an annual general meeting in the previous 3 years. The Secretary would therefore normally bring those matters to the proposer's attention and offer to discuss possible changes. Louise says, I would draw attention to Draft Rule 16.7, which would allow the board to make decisions without discussion. This refers to the not uncommon provision in organisations' rules or standing orders that a written resolution may be circulated to all board members, and if approved by a majority, is as valid as if it had been approved at a meeting. Normally, board decisions are made at a duly called meeting. Where necessary, an extra meeting is held, but sometimes it can help to be able to agree a written resolution where, for example, the board has discussed a matter and is waiting for certain details to be settled. Once it can be reported that all matters have been concluded as anticipated, the final stage will be the passing of a formal board resolution. This would be a suitable use of this provision, where there really is at that stage no value in convening a separate meeting when it can be achieved by circulation of an email. Louise also asked about safeguards around this. Any decision made between scheduled board meetings, whether an extra meeting or a circulated written resolution, would be formally minuted and reported to the following board meeting. Even though these are virtual meetings, the normal protocols still apply, with a set agenda, quorums and minutes, which will form part of the formal records of the Society. Louise's final point is, I believe some changes are misguided, many lack explanation, many have not been discussed, and there is just far too much included in one resolution. The board must keep the rules under review so that they are up to date, meet statutory and regulatory requirements, reflect good practice in the corporate, cooperative and commercial contexts, and enable good governance in developing our success as a business. In my experience, this is not an unusual amount of rule amendments to consider at one time, and as I have said earlier, it is common in my experience for these to be put to members as a single resolution. Your board did, however, after careful thought and consideration, decide to split the proposals into 5 resolutions to enable separate consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. So we're now going to move to a vote, and your feedback from the September online AGM was that we slightly rushed our voting at that meeting. So we're going to have a practice, and I'm going to give you a nice neutral question to allow you to get your hand in. Who is in favour of the colour of my dress? Please look at the screen and vote for, against, or abstain, and I shan't take it personally. Voting will end in 30 seconds. Seven, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And that's the end of the vote on the colour of my dress. And I'm just going to take my watch off so I can, with my failing eyesight, see the second clock. So we're now going to move to the proper resolution, the real vote. You've heard Resolution 1, Corporate Governance. The board proposes the following to the membership and recommend your acceptance of all of them. They should be in front of you on your screen, and as you frankly don't need a reading lesson from me, I'm going to give you enough time to read them through. So you've got for, against and abstain, and the voting will end in 30 seconds. Nine, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. The voting for Resolution 1 is now closed. We'll now move on to Resolution 2, and I will call on the Chair of HF Governance Committee, Ben Reid, to speak to Resolution 2. In this socially distanced environment, Ben is running across the office.
Thank you, Chair. I probably do need the exercise. Resolution 2, headed Financial Regulations. I think that this is the most straightforward of the proposals, and I would urge any member who's come to the meeting with reservations, please consider the following 3 key points before arriving at your final decision. Firstly, our regulator, the Financial Conduct Authority, the FCA, have made it clear that their preference is for us to adopt the approach of setting interest rates in advance of the period that they relate to. This is, in fact, the standard approach for all other deposit takers across the UK. One of the specific concerns that the FCA have is that the way we currently vote for the interest due for the previous financial year at our AGM makes it appear as if it is a distribution of profits. This practice is specifically mentioned in their guidance as something that is not permitted. The change does place greater responsibility on the board to ensure that the interest rates they set are appropriate and indeed affordable. But given that they will have access to current and projected trading figures plus market interest rates, this is quite a reasonable task for them to undertake on your behalf. Secondly, it will be clear to all members that one of the negative impacts of the pandemic has been on our cash balances. In order to address this, we have initially approached our banks for a loan to carry us through this difficult period. But in the longer term, we think that attracting additional members' funds should be part of our solution. In order to do this, we will need the acceptance of the FCA, who will only be supportive if we agree to set the interest rates in advance. The third advantage of adopting this approach is it will help us run the share system more effectively. At the moment, if you choose to withdraw your funds part-way through a year, we are unable to calculate what interest is due to you, because in fact the interest rate isn't set until the AGM after the year end. For some members, this is just an inconvenience. For others, a downright irritation. But consider, for instance, if the request for the closure of the account comes because of a death of a member. It means that we are the cause of a delay in winding up the affairs of one of our members, with all the distress that that can bring. This may be an unintended consequence of our present system, but one that we now have the opportunity to fix. I would therefore urge you to support this resolution. The answer to the challenge of why we're doing this now is absolutely clear. We really do need to respond to the regulator. It wouldn't be in line with the values of HF to ignore a request for compliance from the financial regulator. But probably more important, we need the ability to be able to encourage members to help with the rebuilding of the financial reserves of HF. We therefore ask for your support for this critical resolution.
Thank you, Ben. And there have been no exclusive video submissions from members about this resolution, but I would remind you that David Gray from West Yorkshire did object to it in his video at the start of the meeting. He talked about quite a lot of things, but this was one of them. So bearing all of that in mind, you've heard Resolution 2, Financial Regulations. The Board of Directors proposes the following to the membership and recommends your acceptance of all of them. You should be seeing them on your screen now. Again, I'm not going to read them to you, but I will give you, I hope, sufficient time to go through them yourself. So please follow the option to vote for or against or abstain for Resolution 2, and the voting will end in 30 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The voting for Resolution 2 is closed. I now call on Director Cheryl Honeysett to speak to Resolution 3. Cheryl's recorded her arguments as she lives in a Tier 3 area and can't travel to Elstree to be here live. Immediately after her proposal, we shall hear from 2 members to whom Cheryl will then respond.
Good afternoon, everybody. In this section, I'm going to look at improving our communications with you, our members. It covers electronic communications and electronic attendance at meetings, and there are 3 parts to this. Firstly, we know because many of you have told us you're keen that the Society reduces the amount of paper we send you. We're completely in agreement with that. It's far cheaper counting paper, printing, addressing and postage. An AGM posting to those for whom we only have post addresses costs tens of thousands of pounds and allows you to get information far more quickly if we can contact you electronically. When the rule about this was last amended, it didn't make clear that we need you to opt in to be contacted in that way, which is now a legal requirement, and that's all we're changing. So we will continue to ask you to opt in, but if you still prefer paper, that's fine. Now, our membership not only covers the whole of Britain, but we have increasing membership across the world. So we look to see how we could be more inclusive on the communication side, covering both directors' meetings and members attending the AGM. The key to that is amending what the phrase attending means to include attending by electronic means. So for directors, we have of necessity been meeting online for our board, committees and working groups during lockdown. And whilst we like being physically together as a group, after experimentation we found these online meetings to be effective, efficient and of course cheap. It has allowed board members to take part when in lockdown or when travelling to a meeting on top of a full-time job would have made it impossible. We need in the future to have the flexibility to allow board members to attend some meetings electronically, particularly as we look towards recruiting next-gen board members who are unlikely to be retired. Now, as you know, these rules were designed pre-COVID, but lockdown has shown us how valuable they are. Now for members. Ever since I've been on the board, and this is my 2nd term, so at least 8 years, there have been calls from members saying that all members should have the opportunity to vote on AGM matters. And they felt left out because they couldn't physically get to an AGM. On the other hand, we have a tradition that members listen to the speakers and any debate before voting. As technology has improved, it's allowed your board to plan how that might be possible. Our aim is to have an AGM that members can attend and take part in and vote either physically or electronically. We had planned to stream the March 2020 AGM just so that members could listen to the AGM and partly to test the technology and our ability to use it. Then to have a mixed online and face-to-face AGM in 2021 once we'd had your agreement through a rule change. But then life changed for all of us. We had to postpone that AGM and then went on to plan our recent 100% online AGM, for which we had over 600 members registered. And then this SGM has over 800 members registered. So there's clearly an appetite from members who were previously left out. Our London AGM the year before had the next highest, which was over 300 people physically. But that was extremely expensive, and a venue at that cost probably won't be an option for the next few years anyway. I repeat, the intention is to hold an AGM that members can attend and vote in person or electronically. We know we'll need to do further work on the detail to make sure all members feel included. Technology is improving all the time and becoming simpler for attendees to use. It isn't a groundbreaking provision, and there's a lot of good practice around from us to learn from. At the moment, temporary government rules allow and expect organisations to conduct general meetings online, doing the best they can. However, they've made it clear that this concession is not permanent and have stated that they're giving organisations time to amend their rules. You will have seen other organisations put this in place. I certainly have, the U3A, the Society of Genealogists, and even our local golf clubs, all of which are organisations with an older membership. And this is our turn and our opportunity to allow more members to take part in our democratic process. Given the current physical situation, and that we have to make an early decision on these matters, you've heard that we will not be able to hold a physical AGM next April, much as we'd like to. And the new government concession will run out before then. Some boards have decided to make all decisions on behalf of the members. You've heard that the National Trust has not held an AGM at all and rolled over their council members for another year. But at HF, we prefer to be as democratic as circumstances allow, and therefore we really need to get these particular amendments agreed. Your board commends the rule changes about communication and electronic attendance to the members.
Good afternoon, and my apologies for reading some of this script. My name is Robert Locke, and I was elected to the board in 2016, and I served all that time on the Finance and Estates Group Committee of HF. In the last year, I was its chair. After qualifying as an accountant, I subsequently worked in the family building business, which is now a property company, in which I am still actively engaged. I was also for 20 years financial and commercial director of what became a market-leading tour operator, with 500,000 customers and £7 million profit. I have plenty of experience on HF holidays, having completed 100 of them. In an AGM prior to being elected, I criticised the continuously escalating level of overheads, including the waste of money sending out AGM papers to more than 40,000 members, many of whom barely looked at them before chucking them in the bin. HF sought to bring the society up to date and took the practical view that any member who wanted to continue to receive paper copies could let them know. Everyone else could access them electronically. Some members objected to this as being against the strict interpretation of the rules, allegedly disenfranchising members. To appease these members, a board subcommittee led by the then chair decided they would reverse that practicality and send to everyone who had not asked for electronic distribution. This was presented to the board as a fait accompli, and there was no vote on it. The cost, a staggering £50,000 over 2 years. To attempt now to enshrine that practice in a rule to perpetuate such a colossal waste of money, particularly in a time of financial crisis, lacks judgment and common sense. If members want paper copies, they only have to ask. If HF is to survive, it must cut out unnecessary costs and archaic practices. I urge members to vote against this financially insane rule change. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Louise Cottingham and I live in Leeds. I shall be speaking about Resolution 3. I refer to Rule 21, Conduct of General Meetings, and also to the appendix to the rules, Cooperative Values and Principles. I think it is important to ensure that Rule 21 meets the second principle, which states that cooperatives are democratic organisations controlled by their members who actively participate in setting their policies and making decisions. I would like to see Rule 21 making provision to meet this principle of democratic member control. I want it to be clear that the provision for electronic attendance at a general meeting is a supplement to a real face-to-face meeting. A live meeting should always be held, except when it is illegal or otherwise impossible to do so, as has been the case during this current pandemic. If a live meeting cannot be held, a virtual meeting should discuss only urgent business or meet a statutory requirement, such as for an annual general meeting. The draft rules do not make this clear. As a further proviso, I think Rule 21.3, in respect of determining attendance at a general meeting, should have an addition after the phrase which states that members are able to communicate with one another, which is by voice in real time. I believe this is required to alleviate the difficulties in making a statement in advance of a meeting and then having no opportunity to speak at the meeting, merely to type questions. In preparing for this general meeting, I found that in not knowing what others will say, I do not know whether my statement will be a duplication or whether important points will be missed. It is not possible for me to cover all the points I would wish to make in a 3-minute recording. This feels like trying to communicate through a keyhole. I believe the rules need these additions in order to ensure that members are never again required to vote on important business, such extensive rule changes involving key issues of governance, on the basis of a virtual meeting, except in extreme circumstances. And should this arise, to provide safeguards for active member engagement in real time. I shall be voting against Resolution 3 and would urge you to do so.
Thank you, Robert, for raising a question that may be puzzling members. After the rule change regarding communication was made to add electronic to ways of contacting members about membership, 2 new laws needed taking into account. Firstly, the Cooperative and Community Benefit Act 2014. In section 30, the second paragraph, the Act states that our register must contain the member's electronic address where a member has notified the Society of an electronic address for the purpose of receiving notices or documents. After discussing that long and hard and getting external advice, we interpreted that to mean we need people to opt in, and we stand by that. In addition, we then had to review the reasons, the where and the how of how we held information for members under the new Data Protection Act known as GDPR. So now, in our tidying up, we've made this amendment to ratify what we've been needing to do and have done already to get to this point. We also continue to explore what has to be provided directly to members with regards to our meetings, either by post or electronically, on what documentation can be put up on our website for members to access. Robert may be glad to hear that we've made some steps in that direction already. And he is right, it does cost a lot of money to send out the current paper documentation. So if members want to help our society, please opt in to electronic communication. Thank you. Thank you, Louise, for your clear and well-reasoned question. I do understand your concerns, but we also need to recognise that our face-to-face AGMs are only attended by a very small minority of members, although that's a decent number in itself, and thank you to those of you who regularly attend. The vast majority are denied any vote at all, and that doesn't feel very democratic to us. Active participation takes a lot of forms. For HF, it does mean being able to hear the detail of any motions and to vote, to stand for a role of the director. It does mean members choosing by vote who they wish to direct the organisation on their behalf. And you are right, it does mean stating a view or asking a question at a meeting. The involvement in members in this meeting has been extraordinary, and we've received far more questions than we normally get. And they've all received an answer that all our members can see on our website. The rule has been amended just to change the definition of what attending means, so members will have a choice. So many more members can attend an AGM, participate and vote either online or face-to-face. I've already said that we need to continue working on better engagement for those members who will want to attend online. Please note that voting stays within the meeting rather than before it, as is very common in a lot of organisations. That ensures we maintain a tradition of members listening and contributing to the proceedings and then deciding how to vote. And I think that's really important to recognise. Our current circumstances of having to be entirely online are different and forced on us for the health of our members, but that's not permanent. And the rule change asked for here is to improve our long-term democracy. I hope that has reassured members that the purpose of this is to improve democracy and engagement with our members.
So thank you very much to those members and to Cheryl. And you heard the Resolution 3 electronic engagement with members. The Board of Directors proposes the following to the membership and recommends your acceptance of all of them. You can see the resolution on your screen, and I'm going to give you some time to just go through it because it's a chunky resolution. So, now here I've got a problem. The clock's going off on me. So you've seen the resolution, and on your screen we're asking you to follow the options to vote for or against or abstain for Resolution 3. And voting will end in 30 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The voting for Resolution 3 is now closed. Finally, I call on Director Ben Reid again to speak to Resolution 4. As a result of your feedback, this has been split into 4A and 4B to give maximum flexibility to the vote. Once both resolutions have been presented by Ben and you've heard from members from a different perspective, we will take this resolution to 2 votes. Ben.
Thank you, Chair. Resolution 4, Board of Directors, Terms of Office. This proposal has prompted quite considerable debate amongst the membership. There have been clearly 2 distinct elements to it, so the board has agreed to split this proposal into 2 parts and to offer a vote on each sub-proposal, and that both of the votes, as the Chair said, will come at the end of the presentations. So the 2 elements are A, the terms of office, and B, qualification for election to the board. So I'll take each one in turn. Firstly, currently, so first one, term of office. Currently, HF has no limit on the number of years that a director may serve on the board. This may well have been best practice historically, but is now out of line with both the UK Corporate Code of Governance and, in fact, the Cooperatives Code of Governance. The UK Corporate Code talks about the potential for long terms of office to create a situation where a director can lose their sense of independence and, in fact, their ability to bring fresh thinking into the board debates. They recommend a maximum of 9 years. The Cooperative Code equally recommends 3-year terms, three-year terms, so again, 9 years. It's difficult, therefore, to construct an argument that ignores the 2 bodies that have developed their codes, having observed a wide range of organisations in action, and have an understanding of what makes for a healthy board environment, and in fact drives business success. Just maintaining the status quo because it's the HF way doesn't suggest that we're a forward-looking organisation that is setting its stall out to compete in the modern world. We've had considerable debate around this, and in the end settled on the proposal that directors should be able to serve for a maximum of 12 years, split into 3 4-year terms. Not quite in line with best practice, but a reasonable HF compromise. A good balance between capturing experience and keeping the board refreshed. In reality, If you were to analyse the board elections over the past 10 years, this limit would have made really very little difference to the board composition. It's more about ensuring that there is a framework to ensure a healthy board for the future.
And we're now going to hear from 4 members in response to Resolution 4A, and then Ben will respond.
Fellow members, 1 month ago, I resigned from the board. I resigned because I disagree with Resolutions 4A and B, specifically Rules 14.4 and 14.6. I believe it's undemocratic to exclude any member from standing as a director, which the proposal to limit service to 12 years will do. I also think the proposal that a director may stand for 2 concurrent terms is not in the Society's best interest. Although many charities and retail cooperatives have a length of service restriction and allow consecutive terms, HF is not a charity or a retail cooperative. We have always operated a different system, making all directors step down after a 4-year term, then wait a year before deciding if they have more to offer. This has ensured a constant inflow of new blood and ideas to the board, whilst retaining the corporate memory of directors who are willing to serve as many times as members will support them. For it's the members who must decide who will stand and who is elected, and over the years we've chosen well, people from a wide variety of backgrounds, with a range of skills and experience, who believe passionately in HF Holidays. My concern about the proposed changes is that they encourage the board to get more involved in seeking out, maybe even checking out, suitable candidates. In many charities and mutuals, this has resulted in boards recommending whom their members should vote for, and that would not be democracy. But I had another reason for stepping down early after many periods of board service. I could not support my colleagues' decision to bring these rule changes to the September AGM and then again to this SGM, for 2 reasons. First, I believe it's impossible to hold meaningful debate in a virtual meeting like this. And second, I think revising our rules should not be a priority when HF is facing one of the greatest challenges in its history. It's shameful that we have asked our hard-pressed head office to spend any time on this. I do think the board received unhelpful advice from Cooperatives UK, who did not appreciate the special character of our society. It was clearly a miscalculation to require a simple yes-no vote in September, and despite the board's protestations and amendments, I suggest this SGM is a muddled and unwelcome distraction. So I hope we reject Resolutions 4A and B, and ask our directors to take a more independent view of what style of governance HF actually needs.
Hello, and my apologies for reading this statement from a prepared script. The HF board in many ways is an imperfect model. Election can be random, although ex-board members tend to be re-elected, as was the clique of 3 former directors in my 2nd year, some of whom had presided over poor financial results and out-of-date practices. Was it a good reason to re-elect them again when it was obvious that HF had poor financial direction, the houses were being poorly maintained, to suppress revenue expenditure and reduce apparent losses? There was no competitive tendering for major projects. Overheads were far too high. £280,000 was saved in my first year following a review. HF were focusing on low-yielding late discounts rather than early booking promotions with a price guarantee that had become the custom in the trade. Digital marketing and communication were the way forward. HF needed a computer manager and a more efficient system. I wrote about many of these things before I was on the board, but was completely ignored. HF directors are not supposed to interfere in operational matters and will not overrule management, but these things should have been pointed out at the time and any board member with travel experience should have realised HF were well behind the curve. There's been too much focus on rules, especially those for directors. Among the many misjudgments by the then chair included trying to bulldoze HF rule changes through the virtual AGM as they stood in the middle of a pandemic. This clique I'm referring to are all personal, and in the case of the then chair, exceptionally hard-working. Amongst other matters, they were very good at setting goals, but not really suggesting how to achieve them. HF members cannot have any idea how effective individual board members are. It can be an asset to have continuity experience, but it can also work the other way. I've advocated in the past a paid non-exec chair experience in the travel industry, and possibly 2 non-exec directors with particular expertise to give guidance to the board and support the chief exec. However, with the conservative nature of many vocal, traditionally minded members, that will not happen for at least another generation. Without a fundamental change in the structure of the board, I would urge members to keep the 4-year term, as renewal will bring fresh ideas. Thank you.
Hello, Bob Gomersall from Ilkley here again. I have strong reservations about many of the proposed rules and about the way the process is being handled. However, the proposed rule changes under Resolutions 4A and 4B are at a new level of seriousness. If they are passed, they will make it possible for existing board members who are due to leave the board to stand immediately for election to the board at the next AGM and therefore avoid the year out. They will also have the effect of stopping members who are not on the board but have had more than 12 years' service from standing for the board. In my view, this should be a matter for you, the members, alone. If you don't want someone who has been around for a long time, then you won't vote that way. Resolution 4A sets a 12-year limit. The board argues that non-executive directors run out of fresh ideas after such a period of time. Having been on the board for 32 years, that certainly makes me a dinosaur. All I can say is that it's a funny kind of dinosaur that builds up successful online businesses. In all that time, very few board members did more than 12 years, and those that did contributed with just as much vigour as everyone else. Resolution 4B changes the electoral cycle. The board argues that it is desirable to allow a director who has served for their first term to qualify to stand for immediate re-election. However, the way the rule and the transitional arrangements are drafted, it will allow board members who have served 2 terms to stand for immediate re-election, and that applies to all 3 board members about to leave the board. The nominations for the board are due in by the 31st of December, so this will only be possible if the resolution is passed and registered before that date. There's something wrong in principle here. The current members of the board were elected by the members under the existing rules. That is for 4 years on the board and then a gap of 1 year before they are eligible to stand again. I would have expected that if the rules were changed, they should apply only to board members elected under the new rules. Wearing my dinosaur hat, I would like to quote from our founder, T.A. Leonard, talking about the year out. This has proved with us, as with other organisations, an invaluable preventative to members outstaying their usefulness and has ensured frequent opportunities for introducing new blood into the councils of the movement. In my view, the current electoral cycle, and especially the year out, has been a key feature of the Society's resilience. It has stopped cliques building up and holding power for too long. Some of you may remember CHA, which did not have the year out. With no break, it was impossible for the organisation to move quickly enough as times changed, and the organisation slowly wound down. Board members have always been reluctant to depart after 4 years, but if they come back, they always do so refreshed and ready to go. We have had a very successful formula, and for this reason, I urge you to reject the motions.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kate, and I'm an HF member from Cumbria. I'm also a former director, having served on the HF board between 2015 and 2019. I've recorded this message today to give my support to the updates proposed and to encourage you to vote for these simple but important measures. When I served on the HF board, I was often struck that, having agonised over a modest change to a product for fear of alienating the HF membership, we found that in fact the membership was ahead of us, embracing the changes and even asking us to go further. To put sustainability at the heart of HF, for example, or to become a more diverse and inclusive society. to push on with upgrading the houses and modernising the food and drink offering. We would not have faced the challenges of 2020 from the position of strength we had reached had we listened to our doubts that the membership was up for change. It's always right that change is tested for unintended consequences, and we must continue to consult the solid institutional memory within the membership. But to outshine the competition and keep the society strong for the next 100 years, we need not only to continuously improve our products, but also to make sure our governance arrangements keep pace with good practice and meet people's expectations of a modern organisation providing services in the 2020s and beyond. We must ensure that a seat at the board table is an attractive prospect to those with new insights and relevant talents to offer. And we must bring all our processes in line with current good practice. The proposals we are asked to consider are far from radical. They are simple measures that are not only good practice, but in fact already accepted norms in many organisations. So I hope today the membership will continue to drive HF forward by voting in support of the proposed changes. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chair. I think in many ways the videos tell their own story. Firstly, we have a relatively new member who served on the board for one period, who is describing the difficulties she found within the board arena trying to deliver the changes that the members actually want. We then have two long-serving members who have nearly 60 years of board service between them, telling you that everything is great and there's no reason for change. And then we have another former director, Robert Locke, talking about finding cliques of long-serving members on the board. You could really sense his frustration. So much so that he's voting against this proposal because it's not radical enough. Surely that just underlines the point that experts in governance have made for quite some time, that after a period of time, non-executive directors can lose their objectivity. This is not about being prehistoric. It's being about open and receptive to change. In one of the videos, there is a suggestion that the current system preventing cliques forming, and yet we have two former directors here who clearly served on the board together for in excess of 20 years. That certainly feels to me to have the potential to be described as a clique. The very thing that T.A. Leonard wanted to avoid. Of course, those in the clique are probably the last to notice it, and it's only when you come in from the outside, as Kate did, that it becomes obvious. This reinforces the reason for T.A. Leonard's concern, that we have to avoid a small group of people holding power for too long. In his own video, Bob acknowledges that only a few directors serve for more than 12 years. If that really is the case, as we believe it to be, then what is the threat to HF of setting an upper limit of 12 years? We're not suggesting that the proposals will change things overnight, but they do set us on a journey that would make the HF boardroom more open and receptive to new blood. There is a suggestion that we shouldn't make the changes because HF is in a strong position and capable of dealing with all the challenges that it faces. That is not the view of your board. We are clear that there is a real need to improve the way the board interacts with management and to support them as we move into incredibly challenging times. It was also not the view of our previous chief executive, Jim, who resigned and went to work in a very senior role in one of our competitors. I asked him when he resigned what he considered was HF's greatest challenge. He was absolutely clear. It was a reluctance of some long-serving directors to consider change. Maybe it is time to recognise there could be a better way of doing things. Two final points. Firstly, it was suggested that passing these rule changes will encourage the board somehow to seek out candidates for election. Well, surely all good boards should be thinking about succession and how we encourage members to stand for the board, who will add to the diversity and strength of the group that's there already. Of course, it's then down to the members to elect them. Once elected, we must provide the training and support to help them to be an effective director. I see absolutely nothing in the current proposal that suggests that anything will change. Secondly, a point was made around the 3 directors who are standing down in this election. 2 of them have already made it clear that they have absolutely no intention of standing for the election again this time. The 3rd one hasn't yet made a decision, but should they decide to stand, then it's for the members to decide whether they want to re-elect them. It's absolutely in the hands of the members. That surely cannot be a justification for voting down a rule change. As a board, therefore, we would ask you to take into account the business climate we're operating in and the need for HF to be able to adapt swiftly to changing market conditions, and to vote in support of these resolutions as a statement of your determination to make the board of HF fit for the future. Thank you.
Our final resolution today is 4B, and I call on Director Ben Reid again to speak to this, 4B.
Thank you, Chair. Under the current rules, after a director has served their first term of office, they need to step away for 1 year. That term of office could have been for 1, 2, 3 or 4 years. Not everyone gets elected for a 4-year term. It depends upon the vacancy that you are actually appointed to, where in fact you end up in the rankings of the number of votes. Sometimes it helps to use an example to make a point. So I'd ask yourself to put yourself in the shoes of a new director who's been elected for perhaps 1 or 2 years. You've gone through both the induction and the training that are just starting to make an effective contribution, and then the rules say that you must step away for a year. How would that make you feel? Certainly not valued. Equally, that doesn't make sense for the society, given the investment that has been made in that director. The proposal is to allow that retiring director to stand in the next election and therefore being able to offer those new skills to the membership. It's for the members again to decide who will serve on the board, and there's no suggestion that that will change. What is proposed it will allow members to select their new board members from a wider group of individuals that will include some with recent up-to-date HF experience. This option for a director to stand in an election immediately after their term of office ends would only be available once in their whole period of service, and is therefore mainly focused on the first term of office, during which the new directors has had to put in considerable effort to get up to speed with the many complex issues that a HF board member has to consider. The proposed changes are in line with best practice that you would find in the vast majority of organisations who recognise the value of continuity in the boardroom. Given the misunderstanding amongst some members, I want to be clear what this proposal isn't. It isn't an attempt for the current board to extend their term of office by stealth. There are 3 directors whose terms of office end this year. All 3 are standing down at the end. Only one is even considering whether to put themselves forward for re-election. It isn't an attempt to extend the current standard term of office of 4 years up to 8 years. All current directors and future directors will, if they wish to stand for office again, have to present themselves to the members for re-election. And It isn't an attempt to take away the power of the members to determine who will serve on the board. The members currently elect the board. There is nothing in this proposal that changes that situation. The members will continue to elect the board and are therefore still in control. During the discussions with members around this change, it was recognised that the HF tradition was for directors to take a break in service, and therefore we have agreed to limit the concession so that a director can only use this option once in their whole period of service. This means that once they've used the option, they will still have to take a 1-year break at the end of any future terms in office. Therefore, it is a relatively small change that we believe will bring real benefits to HF and to its members, and therefore so that when the members are selecting who they want to serve them in the future, they have the benefit of the experience these people have gained, and therefore we would ask for your support for this resolution.
Thank you, Ben. 2 members have submitted their views covering this resolution, to which Ben will then respond.
Hello, my name is Chris Steele from Southall. I would like to express significant reservations about the proposed rule changes, specifically those contained in resolutions 4A and 4B. I speak as a former relatively young board member with 2 full terms of service from 2000 to 2004 and from 2005 to 2009. The first change is a proposal to limit the total service of a director to 12 years. For HF, this risks losing a depth of knowledge and understanding of HF as HF. I've always felt that the board for HF has 3 distinct roles. Firstly, to bring external knowledge and expertise, to provide a fresh perspective, like Ben and Elaine have been saying. 2 other roles though as well. Secondly, to have a depth of understanding and provide a depth of scrutiny to HF's particular circumstances. And thirdly, to keep the flame, to preserve HF's HFness, its unique character. By putting a single hard stop of 12 years, we're jeopardising the effectiveness of the board in the second and third roles. The second change is removing the requirement for a director to wait for a year after serving their 4-year term before they stand again. Speaking personally, the year that I spent away from the board was a necessary and useful corrective. Stepping back gave me the distance and time to review and consider matters away from the hurly-burly. Probably in 2004, as I finished my first term, I didn't feel that way. I'd have wanted to stay directly involved, to see things to the next stage, much as Ben and Elaine have been saying. But, in retrospect, having a year away from the board helped me contribute more effectively in my second term. Secondly, the year break helps the board as a whole. The year off prevents a single view dominating for a long period. 8 years is a long time. When an individual leaves the board, other directors change their roles. This allows the board to grow, develop and refresh itself, and it prevents a stagnating groupthink developing. HF already has a proven successful procedure. No adequate justification has been given for changing it, so I shall have to urge the meeting to vote against the resolutions.
Hello, my name is John Bates. I've been a member for many years and my wife Wendy will finish her second term as a director next March. As I'm speaking in favour of resolutions 4A and 4B, I should make it clear that she will definitely not be standing for election again. Now, my support for these motions is based on my extensive experience with boards of management. I'm a fellow at London Business School, an advisor to businesses of all sizes and an investor in young businesses. I'm a non-executive director and chair of several company boards and a charity. As an academic and a practitioner, I keep up to date with best practice. It's worth reminding ourselves just what non-executive directors are for. They are appointed by members to provide expertise, challenge and support to the management. They are not there to run the business. Turning to Resolution 4A, I can confidently say that most guidance on corporate governance advises a maximum of 9-year service, or three-year terms, for non-executive directors. Now, this is not a hard and fast rule, but having a term limit of some sort to allow the board to be refreshed is a very good idea. A maximum of 12 years, 3 by 4-year terms, seems to me a very modest move towards modernisation, and I urge you to support the motion. Turning to Resolution 4B, I understand why this resolution has been put forward. I follow the argument that forcing a director to take a year out after 4 years on the board means they stand down just as they are most useful. I can see that the rule is particularly unhelpful if a director has been elected to fill a casual vacancy and might serve for only 1 year before standing down. It's not a good use of the considerable time and effort that goes into inducting a new board member. And the objections to this resolution seem to me to misrepresent what is being proposed. A board member becomes eligible to stand for re-election, that's all. I don't see it as a board shoo-in. We members will still decide who we want on the board. Now, I've watched with pleasure as HF has modernised over the last few years. I remind members that the last financial year produced the best operating surplus in a decade and added over £1 million to the balance sheet. This significantly enhanced the resilience of the society to face these extraordinarily difficult times. I think we can trust these guys, and I will be voting for the motion and encourage you to do so too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So thank you to both of those members for those videos. I think, having seen them, I haven't really got anything more to add to this debate. Your board believes that there is a need to bring in what are modest changes to reflect modern business practice and to encourage diversity. We recognise that HF has a particular culture, and indeed that's what's attracted us all to it. But at the heart of this debate is the need to be able to compete in a harsh, competitive world. Embracing change is always daunting, but change is not an acceptance of a weakness in the present system, more an indication of the strength and self-confidence of an organisation. So the board would ask our members to send out a clear message that HF are up for the challenge and that we're not afraid to adapt to the world in which we have to compete, and we would ask you to support these resolutions. Thank you, Chair.
So you've heard Resolution 4A, qualification to stand for election to the board. The Board of Directors proposes the following to the membership and recommends your acceptance of all of them. The wording is on your screen, and I'll give you a short amount of time just to absorb that wording. Now, please follow the option to vote for, against or abstain for Resolution 4A. The vote will end in 30 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The voting for Resolution 4A is now closed. You've heard Resolution 4B, qualification to stand for election to the board. The Board of Directors proposes the following to the membership and recommends your acceptance of all of them, and the wording is on your screen. Please follow the option to vote for, against or abstain, and voting will end in 30 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The voting for resolution 4B is now closed and the voting is complete. Now, as the votes are being independently ratified by our chief executive, David Harrington, who has also, I would mention, run across the socially distanced office, which is empty, is going to update us on how he and his amazing team are dealing with the huge challenges of running a holiday organisation during a global pandemic. If you've actually managed to get to one of the houses, our houses this year, which I recently had the good fortune to do and get to Whitby, it is just incredibly impressive how hard the staff are working to keep things going in the best way possible. I met an old friend at Whitby for a 3-night walking holiday. He'd never been on an HF holiday and he so enjoyed it that he immediately signed up for membership, David, and I haven't made that up. So let's hear how you're getting on.
Thank you, Helen. Good afternoon, everyone. It's been an unbelievable year of hardship and loss, but it seems there is some hope again with vaccines and a declining R. However, there are still many challenges ahead, and I hope to share some of these today along with a future roadmap. To sum up, this past 9 months for me is in the phrase, "A captain never learnt to sail in calm seas." Well, the water at times has been very choppy. At the September AGM, I gave an outline of what had happened before, during and after lockdown. Since then, we have had further fire breaks, rules of 4 and 6, tiers and a lockdown. The different restrictions across the UK has been difficult to interpret for everyone. However, my aim today is to look ahead and to, despite what is still a very fluid and uncertain future. In summary, the pandemic has affected HF Holidays hugely, as it has done for all businesses in travel and hospitality. Public health, however, must come first, and we hope that many of the restrictions over the next few months will start to be relaxed, enabling us to operate more freely. It is worth noting that the pandemic came at a time in March when we start to become busy both in the UK and abroad. We are a seasonal business, and so a sudden closing and then even a partial reopening later in the year has made a huge impact on our financial position. Our losses will be in millions, and far worse than our previous loss during foot and mouth back in 2001. In the UK, we have lost 60% of our UK bookings, and for abroad it was higher at 80%. The start of the new financial year from the 1st of November 2020 has suffered with a month-long lockdown and then the new tier restrictions, meaning our festive operation has been reduced by nearly 50%. To show some scale, cancellations were up over 200% between February and November. Well over 26,000 bookings had to be cancelled. That's bookings, not people, and then we also had the new bookings and rebookings to handle at the same time. This year has all been about the R number, and for HF Holidays this can be expanded to RE, rebookings, reopening, restrictions, refunds, sadly redundancies, restructuring, refinancing, remote working, and above all, it has been relentless. However, HF above all as a society is resilient, and we will see this through. To enable us to do this, we all need to work together. Members, staff and leaders. We need to be united so we can continue for another 100 years. Our values will also help us in this journey. Remember, before the pandemic, we were trading successfully and profitably. Guest satisfaction was high, guest numbers were up, and we had no debts. To keep members informed now, I wish to provide an update on some key areas which will help us through these challenging times. They are financial stability, managing costs, trading and how members can help, and opportunities. On financial stability, I will spend more time explaining. As mentioned in September, to stabilise our finances, we will need a government-backed loan, or CBILS, Corona Business Interruption Loan Scheme. When the pandemic started, we knew quickly we would need a larger overdraft, so we approached our current bank, Handelsbanken, to secure this. The bank held 7 of our houses on charge, this is as security, and this was a legacy from previous mortgages that we had paid off last year. Ironically, we were looking to reduce this commitment, plus we also felt they had simply had too many houses on charge. The extra overdraft was secured, but as time progressed, we knew we needed a larger loan. We were not trading for the main season, and simply put, a seasonal business like ours needed that larger loan to give us security. We cannot easily cut or reduce all our costs at our houses or offices. Sadly, our bank did not have access to such government loans. So the spring and summer was spent shopping for a new lender, and obviously in a lockdown with no trading, we did not look an attractive option. It was not an ideal time to be looking for someone to lend us millions of pounds. We had a few false dawns and sleepless nights. However, by late summer, we had 2 options. Our existing bank now had government approval, but we had managed to secure new banking terms with a large loan from the NatWest. Overall, the package of support looked more attractive with the NatWest, so we have now started switching accounts, and we hope that this will be complete by Christmas. NatWest saw HF Holidays as a solid, reliable organisation which had been temporarily affected by the pandemic. We will be getting a CBILS loan of £3.5 million, along with a further £2 million of rolling credit facility. The loan is repayable over 6 years and, crucially, no payments in year 1, giving us more time to stabilise our position and, if needed, restructure our finances, maybe with a longer term loan. Importantly, only 7 houses continue to be on charge to provide this security and with the new overdraft, and other banking arrangements such as foreign currency. Importantly, we still have 7 houses without any charge. Of course, it is a huge debt. However, our options are limited. I will speak more about opportunities in trading later. Moving on to managing our costs. To weave our way through this crisis, and while cash is king, we will be managing costs carefully. We will need to be careful with our spending. Some areas of expenditure will be postponed, and major house refurbishments probably delayed. For 2021 though, we have still budgeted over £1 million in house repairs and maintenance. Good work had already commenced on managing our costs in 2019, especially in the houses, and the results could be seen in last year's accounts. Our work, of course, has been interrupted now, but we still see opportunities, and we will be watching every pound that we spend. At the offices, our overheads have been reviewed, and compared to 2019, not 2020, we expect a 4% drop. All salaries for staff will be frozen for 2021, and our marketing has been reduced, as we know many members and guests have already rebooked, for which we are grateful. Finance costs, sadly, will increase, and we have also continued with installing a new reservation software system, which we feel we need to ensure we compete in this marketplace where we see new competitors entering the market. We had signed the contract before lockdown, so in 2021 we will have the double cost of 2 IT systems, but that will cease in 2022. It is an important investment for the future. We will continue to take advantage of furlough opportunities and grants. However, most grants are nowhere near enough to match our losses when country houses have to close. Opening under restrictions with reduced capacities means we do not generate the same amount of cash. I will repeat, at our houses we do not want guest satisfaction impacted on our holidays, and we will continue best practice on managing our costs. On trading, many members have asked me how they can help. My immediate answer is clear: book an HF holiday. HF will need to trade out of this crisis, and hopefully the good news we keep hearing on the vaccines will help us. If you will have a refund credit note with us, firstly, my deepest thanks to you for not asking for a refund, as that really helps us. Secondly, now is the time for you to use this to book an HF holiday, and if you know friends in this position, please tell them to do the same. The Prime Minister likes his catchphrases: hands, face, space. Well, for HF, it's look, book and walk. Look at our website or the brochure for a holiday, then go online or on your phone to book, and then finally walk on your holiday. We much prefer you book a holiday rather than request a refund. If you don't have a refund credit note, then the message is simple: please make a new booking. With my sales hat on, I recommend you book as soon as possible to secure the best prices. We are also now taking bookings for 2022 holidays overseas. I know members have asked should they invest, and why has there been no appeal to members to help. The priority to me and my team has been to secure our financial stability and then to review next steps. I also believe membership investment should be for growth and not debt. In time, we will be approaching members, and of course members can increase now their investment at any time. And please do encourage non-members to join. There is an incentive for non-members to do this, as we have increased the fee to £20 per person per booking. Finally, opportunities. Risks remain. More lockdowns and similar, plus we have not even mentioned the word Brexit. In the UK, many leisure activity holidays still cannot operate due to social distancing restrictions. Despite what I've said, we still feel opportunities exist for us, and it's useful I share some of these with you. It has been suggested that HF may need to sell a house. That is a possibility. However, we need our assets for trading, and all the research shows that staycations will remain popular. We believe our financial restructuring will avoid any disposals, but we are looking at some disposals of non-trading assets. These are areas of land which would not impact guest satisfaction, and we have identified 3 possible areas across our estate. Any disposals will take time, but the work has begun. Our insurance claim for £250,000 for business interruption has been held up in the courts, with insurers challenging a Financial Conduct Authority (FCA) test case. Highly frustrating for us, but hopefully this will be resolved soon and we can then make a claim. We are still owed thousands of pounds from overseas suppliers and agents, and we hope they will refund us, or we can use that credit during the next year, as these have not been included in our forecasting. Talking of the forecast, we have put in what we feel are prudent sales figures. In the UK, we expect strong sales. However, we have been much more cautious for overseas holidays, and these could be better than expected. Our forecasts have included the CBILS loan and the rolling credit facility, but have excluded any major government grants or support, and we will maximise where we can such opportunities such as furlough, business rates and grants. So in closing, can I give my thanks to a number of people, to office colleagues for their hard work, especially coping with the challenges of remote working, to the house teams creating those COVID-secure environments and wonderful holiday experiences, to our leaders for incredible enthusiasm and dedication, to the field advisors for finding those walks without transport, and to the board for their guidance and diligence. Finally, can I thank you, the members. In September, I apologise that at times our responses may not have been up to our usual high standard, and for that I am sorry. I want to thank you for your loyalty, patience and supporting HF Holidays during this extremely difficult time by either booking a holiday or increasing your investment, or both. Your commitment in attending this event shows the health and interest in our wonderful society, with over 850 of you registering. And to every one of you can I say a final thank you, and to generally hope for a better 2021.
Thank you, David. And if there was a live meeting, I think you'd be met by a storm of appreciative applause, because all of us feel so grateful to you for leading this team. They've been a great team, but great teams need great leadership. And you've really played a blinder, as they say in football, which I know you love. So thank you very, very much. I now welcome Tom Marshall from HF solicitor Debenham and Ottaway. The voting, as you know, was hosted by StreamGo and independently scrutinised by Tom, who works for Debenham's Ottaway solicitor.
Thank you, Helen. I'm happy to confirm I've independently verified the special general meeting today, the 12th of December, on behalf of HF Holidays. I confirm that satisfactory procedures of voting process hosted by StreamGo have been in place today.
Thank you very much. And we can now go to the results of the voting, and we're going to first look at the test vote result on the colour of my dress. This was our practice. I see there were a large number of abstentions. I shan't take that personally. The total number of votes was 428, and this just shows you how the system works. So we'll move on from my dress, the test, and we'll go to the results for Resolution 1, the Resolution 1 on corporate governance. The total number of votes was 442. The number for was 331. The number against was 111. The percentage for was therefore 74.9%, and there were 69 abstentions, and that means Resolution 1 has passed. Resolution 2 on financial regulations. The total number of votes was 502. The number for was 442. The number against was 60. The abstentions were 24. The percentage accepting this resolution was 88%, and the percentage rejecting it was 12%. That means Resolution 2 has passed. Resolution 3, electronic engagement with members. The total number of votes was 512. The number for was 449. The number against was 63. 18 people abstained. The percentage for this resolution was therefore 87.7%, and the percentage against was 12.3%. That means Resolution 3 has been passed. Resolution 4A, remember we split this resolution, the Board of Directors maximum service. The total number of votes was 497. The number for was 403. The number against was 94. The number who abstained was 24. Therefore, the percentage of you in favour of this resolution was 81.1%. The percentage against was 18.9%. That means Resolution 4A has been passed. Resolution 4B, the qualification to stand for election to the board. The total number of votes was 481. The number for was 380. The number against was 101. The number who abstained was 40. The percentage for the resolution was 79%. The percentage against the resolution was 21%. That means Resolution 4B has also been passed. Over to you, Malcolm.
Thank you, Helen. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you both for your time and for your support today. The next AGM will take place on the 10th of April 2021, and given the uncertainty of the current situation, it is highly unlikely there will be a physical component to it. Thank you again very much indeed.
So, this is the end of our first ever online special general meeting, and once again a huge thank you to all of you for taking part. We always want feedback, so please email us at sgm@hfholidays.co.uk. But I'm actually going to end today on quite a bittersweet note. As many of you will know, one of our vice presidents, Harry Rowe, sadly died at the end of October. Harry was passionate about HF and gave everything to it. His daughter Catherine got in touch with me specially to make sure he could join our September AGM by computer, even though he was only just out of hospital and very weak. He was a great leader, and over many decades, his walking knowledge and sense of fun lit up many holidays. He was an enthusiast without ever being pushy, a kind man who gave people confidence to try new experiences. I remember turning up at Exmoor without my walking boots. My husband and I both thought the other had put it in the car boot. That was an interesting domestic discussion. It was a disaster, but not for Harry. He simply said, "Oh, the post office in the next village sells walking boots. Give them a ring and ask them to open at 8 o'clock in the morning." So we did. And newly booted, we were on the HF bus for 9:30. And Harry was a doer. He was a field advisor for Bourton and sat on the board for 2 terms. He made sure HF remembered its roots by writing its definitive history and updating it for our centenary. He set up our first heritage room at our Conwy House and then transferred it all to Newfield Hall. And he set up and chaired HF's Retired Leaders Association. It's an understatement to say that many of us will really miss Harry, and today think of his wife Janet, his family, and also his long-term leading companion Viv. But we also celebrate Harry and all that he and HF did for each other. It was a very happy union, the kind only HF can deliver. And on that note, I can confirm that we have completed business and I declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much.